Freddie Mercury stood backstage at the MTV Video Music Awards on September 14, 1991, at the Universal Amphitheater in Los Angeles, when a young production assistant approached him with a message that would make him do something no one expected. What happened next didn't just shock the 6,000 people in the audience, it changed how the entire music industry thought about courage forever. The air backstage smelled of hairspray and nervous energy. Artists rushed past in designer outfits, practicing their acceptance speeches, checking their makeup one last time. Freddie sat alone in his dressing room, wearing a simple white button-down shirt and black jeans. No sequins, no cape, no crown. Those who knew him well understood what this meant. He was saving his energy for something important. At 42 years old, Freddie had lost 28 pounds in the past 6 months. His cheekbones, always prominent, now cast shadows across his face under the harsh backstage lights. But his eyes, those dark, defiant eyes, still burned with the same fire that had commanded stadiums of 80,000 people. Tonight, he was scheduled to present the award for Best New Artist. It should have been simple. Walk out, read the teleprompter, hand over the trophy, walk off. 5 minutes maximum. But nothing was ever simple when it came to Freddie Mercury and MTV. The production assistant, a 23-year-old named Jennifer Walsh from Ohio, knocked 3 times before entering. She'd been working at MTV for only 8 months, and this was her first major awards show. Her hands trembled as she held a folded piece of paper. "Mr. Mercury," she said softly, "I have a message from the executive producers." Freddie turned from the mirror where he'd been adjusting his collar. He smiled at her, that genuine, warm smile that made you forget you were talking to a rock legend. "Please, darling, call me Freddie. What is it?" Jennifer unfolded the paper. Her voice cracked as she read, "They've decided to. They want you to present from backstage, via video feed. They think it would be better for everyone." The room went silent. You could hear the muffled bass from the rehearsal stage 3 rooms away. "Better for everyone," Freddie repeated slowly. "Or better for their ratings when families are watching." Jennifer's face flushed red. "I'm just delivering the message, sir. I mean, Freddie, I'm so sorry." What Jennifer didn't know was that this had been building for months. MTV had revolutionized music when it launched in 1981, giving visual artists like Freddie Mercury and Queen a global platform. Their video for Bohemian Rhapsody had helped birth the music video era. Radio Gaga, I Want to Break Free. Under Pressure, MTV had played them all, thousands of times, helping build Queen into one of the biggest bands in the world. Freddie remembered the early days clearly. 1981, when MTV first aired and played Bohemian Rhapsody during their second hour of programming. He'd been at a party in London when someone called to tell him. The network executives had loved how theatrical it was, how perfectly it translated to the new visual medium. They'd called him a pioneer, a visionary. They'd invited him to their launch parties, put his face on promotional materials, used Queen's videos as examples when pitching to advertisers about the power of the new format. In 1985, Queen had performed at Live Aid, broadcast on MTV to 19 billion people worldwide. It was called the greatest live rock performance in history. MTV ran specials about it for months. Freddie's 20-minute set at Wembley Stadium became the gold standard for what a live performance could be. The network's executives had sent him flowers, champagne, handwritten notes thanking him for making their broadcast unforgettable. And now, 6 years later, those same executives were asking him to hide. But in 1991, everything was different. The whispers had started, the rumors, the visible changes in Freddie's appearance. And MTV, now a corporate giant worth hundreds of millions, had made a decision. They wanted Freddie's name for credibility, his legend for prestige, but they didn't want his face on their broadcast. Not anymore. Not looking like he did now. The phone calls had started 3 weeks earlier. First from his manager, Jim Beach, who'd received a delicate inquiry from MTV's head of programming. Could Freddie perhaps present via satellite? From London, maybe. Then came the suggestion of a pre-recorded message. Finally, yesterday the compromise. Appear at the venue but stay backstage. Deliver his lines to a camera in a controlled environment with soft lighting and careful angles. Freddie had listened to each suggestion in silence. He'd thanked Jim for handling the conversations with such diplomacy, and then he'd started making his own phone calls. The official word was never spoken aloud, but everyone backstage understood it. MTV was afraid. Afraid of sponsors pulling out. Afraid of parents changing the channel. Afraid of the disease that nobody wanted to name on national television. Freddie stood up slowly. He walked to the small window that looked out over the backstage area. He could see the massive stage, the elaborate set pieces, the cameras worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, all built on the backs of artists like him, who had made MTV relevant in the first place. "Jennifer," he said quietly, "how old are you?" 23, sir. "Do you like working here, at MTV?" She nodded, confused by the question. "Yes, very much. It's my dream job." "And if they asked you to hide backstage because of who you are, because of how you look, would you do it?" Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. I don't know." Freddie turned to face her. "Yes, you do know, darling. We all know. The question is whether we have the courage to honor what we know." He paused, then smiled that devastating smile. "Tell the executive producers I received their message, and tell them I have a response." Jennifer left the room, her hands still shaking. As she walked down the corridor toward the production office, she passed by Freddie's dressing room one more time. Through the partially open door, she could see him standing at the mirror, not looking at his reflection, but at a photograph he'd pulled from his jacket pocket. It was from the 1985 Live Aid performance, Freddie in his white tank top and jeans, fist raised to the sky, 72,000 people behind him singing I.O. in unison. He touched the photo gently, as if drawing strength from that moment, from that version of himself who'd commanded the world's attention without apology. What she didn't know was that Freddie had been preparing for this moment for weeks. He had known somehow that MTV would do this. The signs had been there, the uncomfortable pauses from executives when discussing his appearance, the suddenly flexible schedule that allowed for remote participation, the careful language in every email and phone call that never quite said what everyone was thinking. So Freddie had been making calls to Elton, who'd answered on the first ring and said, "Tell me what you need, darling, and I'll be there." To George Michael, who'd been fighting his own battles with the music industry and understood exactly what this moment meant. To David Bowie, to members of U2, to Axl Rose, who'd surprised everyone by immediately agreeing, saying, "Freddie gave me the courage to be myself on stage. Now it's my turn." He'd coordinated flight schedules, arranged backstage passes, sworn everyone to secrecy. He'd worked with his lawyer to understand MTV's contract. They'd agreed he would present the award, but nothing in the contract specified from where. That loophole was about to become legendary. 30 minutes later, the show was in full swing. Madonna had performed. Michael Jackson had presented an award via satellite from Neverland Ranch. The crowd was electric, the energy perfect. And then came the moment for Best New Artist. The lights dimmed. The announcer's voice boomed across the amphitheater. "Ladies and gentlemen, to present the award for Best New Artist, please welcome, via video feed, Freddie Mercury." The massive screens on either side of the stage flickered to life. But instead of showing Freddie in some comfortable backstage setting as MTV had planned, the screens showed something else entirely. They showed the stage itself, the actual physical stage at the Universal Amphitheater. And walking onto that stage in front of 6,000 people and 20 million television viewers worldwide was Freddie Mercury. In person, in defiance, in living, breathing, unapologetic flesh. He wasn't alone. Behind him walked Elton John, wearing his signature oversized glasses and a glittering jacket. Beside Elton came George Michael, looking somber in a simple black suit. And behind them, dozens of other artists, Axl Rose, Lisa Stansfield, members of U2, David Bowie via satellite on a smaller screen carried by a stagehand, all walking in solidarity. Some were gay, some were straight. All were furious at what MTV had tried to do. The camera operators didn't know where to point. The director in the control booth was screaming into headsets. But every camera found its way to the same image. Freddie Mercury, walking slowly but steadily across the stage, each step a declaration. His white shirt seemed to glow under the lights. His posture was perfect. Shoulders back, head high, that familiar slight swagger that had defined his stage presence for 2 decades. In the front row, several artists who'd already performed. Madonna, Janet Jackson, rose to their feet. Then the second row, then the third. Within 15 seconds, all 6,000 people in the Universal Amphitheater were standing, and the noise was transforming from confused murmurs into something else entirely. Not quite applause yet, something deeper, recognition perhaps, or witness. The sound of people understanding they were watching history pivot on a single moment. The audience didn't know whether to applaud or sit in stunned silence. They did both. A scattered, confused, gradually building wave of noise that turned into something approaching thunder. Freddie walked to the microphone at center stage. The spotlight hit him full force. Every camera in the building turned toward him. MTV's control room erupted in chaos. But what could they do? Cut to commercial during the Best New Artist announcement? The lawyers would go insane. The sponsors would be furious. Freddie had trapped them in their own show. He stood there for a moment, letting the cameras focus, letting America see him exactly as he was. Thin, pale, undeniably sick, and absolutely defiantly present. "Good evening," he said, and his voice still had that crystalline quality that could reach the back row of any stadium. "I was supposed to do this from backstage, through a video feed, safely hidden away where no one would have to look at me too closely." The crowd went completely silent. "But I've spent my entire career insisting on one thing, that everyone, no matter who they are, no matter what they look like, no matter who they love, deserves to be seen, to be heard, to take up space in this world." He paused. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, but somehow more powerful. "MTV built their empire on artists like us. They took our creativity, our risks, our refusal to be invisible, and they turned it into billions. But tonight, they wanted me to present this award to a new generation of artists while hiding in a back room, as if I was something shameful, as if my visibility were a problem to be managed." Elton John stepped forward, putting his hand on Freddie's shoulder. The gesture was simple, but the meaning was enormous. Freddie continued. "So I want to say something to every artist out there, every kid watching this at home, every person who has ever been told they need to hide who they are to make others comfortable. You don't. You never have to. Your visibility is your power. Your truth is your strength. And no corporation, no matter how big, no matter how powerful, has the right to dim your light." The amphitheater erupted. It wasn't polite applause. It was something raw and fierce. People on their feet, screaming, some crying. MTV's cameras couldn't cut away even if they wanted to. This was history being made, live and unscripted. Freddie opened the envelope. "The MTV Video Music Award for Best New Artist goes to..." He paused, a slight smile playing at his lips. "All of you. Every artist brave enough to be visible in a world that often wants you to hide." Then he read the actual winner's name, handed over the trophy, and walked off stage with his army of allies behind him. The whole thing had taken less than 4 minutes, but those 4 minutes detonated like a bomb through the music industry. Backstage, MTV executives stood frozen in a cluster near the production monitors. Some looked furious, others looked terrified. A few, particularly the younger staff members, were crying. The head of programming, a 45-year-old man in an expensive suit who'd made the original decision to hide Freddie, sat down heavily in a folding chair and put his head in his hands. "We're done," he said to no one in particular. "We're absolutely done." But he was wrong about what they were done with. They weren't done as a network. They were done being able to hide from this issue, done being able to pretend that AIDS wasn't affecting people America loved, done being able to make quiet, cowardly decisions in corporate boardrooms without consequences. MTV's phone lines exploded. The switchboard, designed to handle 500 calls simultaneously, was overwhelmed within minutes. Some viewers were outraged that Freddie had appeared looking like that on their television, but far more, hundreds of thousands more, called to say they'd never been more proud to watch MTV. Sponsors who had threatened to pull out renewed their contracts. The broadcast became the highest-rated VMAs in history up to that point. In New York, at the main MTV headquarters, the fax machines ran continuously for 72 hours straight. Letters poured in by the thousands, some hateful, but most passionate and grateful. A 16-year-old from Iowa wrote, "I'm gay and I've been thinking about hurting myself because I'm so scared." Watching Freddie refuse to hide made me want to stay alive long enough to find that kind of courage. A mother from Florida wrote, "My son died of AIDS last year. Seeing Freddie treated that way by your network and watching him fight back finally made me understand what my son went through. Thank you for showing his courage even if you didn't mean to." The major newspapers, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Los Angeles Times, all ran front-page stories the next day. Not about who won awards, about what Freddie Mercury had done, about visibility, about courage, about the moment a dying man walked onto a stage and dared the world to look away. But the real impact wasn't in the ratings. 3 weeks later, on November 22, 1991, Freddie Mercury held a press conference. He announced publicly that he had AIDS. He didn't hide. He didn't apologize. He didn't minimize. He just told the truth. "I've kept my privacy as long as I could," he said, "but the time has come to be honest. Not for pity, not for sympathy, but because visibility matters. Because every face of this disease is someone's son, someone's brother, someone's friend, and we all deserve to be seen." He died 2 days later. But here's the part that no one saw coming, the part that transformed tragedy into legacy. MTV, the same network that had tried to hide him, became one of the loudest voices in AIDS awareness programming. Within 6 months, they launched Staying Alive, a global foundation for HIV prevention that would go on to reach 865 million young people worldwide with education and resources. They created programming that showed faces, real faces, not hidden ones, of people living with HIV and AIDS. At the 1992 Freddie Mercury tribute concert, broadcast globally on MTV, George Michael took the stage at Wembley Stadium in front of 72,000 people. Before he sang, he said, "Freddie taught us that being seen, really seen exactly as you are, isn't just an act of courage, it's an act of love. It's how we change the world." The camera panned across the audience. Signs everywhere read, "Freddie was here. Visibility is power. Thank you for being seen." In the years that followed, more than 200 musicians cited that moment at the 1991 VMAs as the reason they found courage to come out, to speak their truth, to refuse to hide. The Trevor Project, founded 3 years later, would reference Freddie's defiant visibility as inspiration for their work with LGBTQ+ youth. The AIDS Memorial Quilt, traveling to cities across America, carried a panel created by fans with a simple message stitched in silver thread: "He refused to hide." Jennifer Walsh, that 23-year-old production assistant, eventually became a senior vice president at MTV. In 2016, when she helped launch MTV's Elect This campaign promoting LGBTQ+ political engagement, she gave an interview about what inspired her career in advocacy programming. "I was the person who had to deliver that message to Freddie," she said, tears in her eyes even 25 years later. "I was the one who had to tell one of the greatest artists who ever lived that my bosses wanted him to hide. And I watched him turn that moment of shame into a lesson about courage that I've carried every single day since. He taught me that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to be invisible." Freddie Mercury spent his career teaching us to embrace the theatrical, the dramatic, the spectacular. But in his final public appearance, he taught us something simpler and more profound: that showing up as yourself exactly as you are, even when the world wants you to hide, especially when the world wants you to hide, is the most revolutionary act of all. MTV tried to ban him from their stage. He responded by claiming not just that stage, but every stage that came after. His visibility became a lighthouse for everyone still finding courage to be seen. That's not just a show business story. That's a blueprint for how we transform shame into power, how we turn exclusion into solidarity, how we make our visibility matter. 4 minutes on a stage, 25 years of impact, millions of lives touched by the simple, defiant choice to be seen. That's the legacy of the moment MTV tried to hide Freddie Mercury, and he showed up anyway. If this incredible story of Freddie Mercury's courage and refusal to be silenced moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear about the power of visibility and standing up for what's right. Have you ever witnessed a moment when someone refused to hide their truth despite pressure to do so? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to ring that notification bell for more amazing true stories about the heart and courage behind music's greatest legends.